first Trips and Traps of 2016. Richard Migliore. I'm not Andy Serling. I'm Travis Stone. Andy's in Florida, so I'm filling in for now, and we kick off the new year with a few videos to watch and some things to look forward to.
Yeah, I think a nice mixed bag. Some glaring trips that are easy to pick out, some subtler trips that maybe had more to do with bias, but I think interesting to talk about the inner track.
Yeah, the inner track, typically a very fair race track. Not a lot goes on in terms of inside-outside paths, but over the past few weeks we have seen, whether it be speed or inside or outside flowing tracks.
I actually like biases because I think as somebody playing races, you can jump on a bias, and if you catch it a little earlier than everybody else, maybe you get some value.
And then you can get the bet backs next time around when they come back to run. Let's take a look at our first video. We're going to go before the holiday break to this two-turn maiden claiming event. This was an interesting day because it was part of a big Pick 5 carryover, the only Pick 5 carryover we had. We're going to take a look at the inside Bunyan or Bunyan and the 10 Tom's Gift. Pretty interesting early developments in this race.
Yeah, a lot going on here. I'm going to go with Bunyan because it lends itself to me saying when he stubs his toe here going into the first turn, and he obviously giving Dylan Davis a very hard time, and he winds up bolting to the outside. And at the same time affecting Tom's Gift, who got hung up outside of him. Nothing Eric Cancel could do here. He just got, Jose Ortiz could do. There's nothing he could do. He's hung up outside a horse who's bolting. He got around him, but he had to use his horse to get around him. And you could see here, Bunyan, he's basically being pulled up by Dylan Davis just to get him back under control.
This is interesting. So Tom's Gift was up against it from the word go with a quick run to the first turn in the outside post. So he was always going to have to overcome that outside draw. It doesn't help when a horse to your inside decides to bolt 5 or 6 paths off the rail and all of a sudden is completely out of the picture. Two very diverse trips for these two.
Very diverse trips. And I think Jose Ortiz was trying to do the right thing. When you leave from the outside, you want to leave with intention. Make the inside horses go, spread the field out a bit, give yourself some options. You can't anticipate a horse doing what Bunyan did.
Moving on to the far turn, Tom's Gift has actually found an okay spot for now, despite the fact of the earlier trouble. But not in the picture at all is Bunyan, who's completely, he's at least 15 lengths, maybe even more than that behind. And you're going to see him pop into the picture in about a 1/16 of a mile. What happens from here to the wire is pretty interesting. First off, Tom's Gift's going to finish the race fairly strongly, account for himself well. But take a look at where Bunyan is, way out of the picture, and watch him down the stretch as he gets the job done to at least, finish a respectable on the board 5th.
I'd be honest with you, that's my question to you. I'm more impressed with Bunyan, even though Tom's Gift had to do all that dirty work and stuff, but how much the best, in my estimation, was Bunyan to be pulled up, basically, and then rally the way he did.
So the question is, what does the chart line and the comment line look like when they run back next time? Everybody's going to see that Bunyan had all sorts of trouble, is relegated back to last. Tom's Gift, it's going to indicate trouble on the first turn, but he was forwardly placed the whole time. So the question is, how does the public respond to those two and whether or not they bet them the right way? The interesting thing in there as well is Core Portfolio, who broke near the inside, inherited a very easy lead, no pace pressure whatsoever, wire-to-wire win on paper, is probably going to get overbet next time too.
Yeah, because basically this race was a gift to him. He easily could have been 5th. He had everything break his way, and he got the job done. I agree with you. I think he'll be well overbet. I like both Tom's Gift and Bunyan, but I think Bunyan is the one who has the most upside. I think he has no clue of what he's doing yet, and when he figures out the game, he could turn into a much better horse than just a $50,000 maiden.
Interesting race. We'll see what happens. They're going to be running back fairly soon, as that was before the break. We'll move on to December the 26th. This is post-holiday break, and this is one of those days we were talking about with some fairly significant biases going on. Wide runs, outside paths did the best in this spot. We're going to look at both Sassicaia, who's on the outside. That's the eventual winner. And buried in there with the yellow cap is Newbin Ridge. Once again, I think the key in this race is that the outside paths were the way to be on this day after Christmas.
And I think it was so pronounced, Travis, that you really had a big edge being outside. And that's intuitive to the way the inner track normally plays. Even if it's a fair track, you want to save ground. Yep. The tight turns. But on this day, you didn't worry about losing ground. You wanted to be outside and basically catch that conveyor belt. So Angel Cruz is trying to do the right thing on Newbin Ridge, and he was steadied a little bit down the backstretch. He drops to the fence. Sassicaia is wide. And you're going to see coming up in here, they're basically in the same position, just one's wide and one's inside. And I think Sassicaia got the trip for the day.
As you saw, Newman Ridge he studied a little bit up the backstretch, lost about a length and a half, maybe 2 lengths, was relegated over to the rail. This is not where you want it to be. It's so amazing when you see them come wide off the turn. Sassicaia is 5 or 6 pads off the rail, is going to sustain this rally to get the job done. Meanwhile, Newman Ridge, mired down inside on a waterlogged in sort of, burying his feet a little bit, not getting the traction he needs to get going. Right here, they're still sort of even. Sassicaia is going to get the win, but you have to aid it to the bias.
Yeah, I absolutely do. And I thought this was a subtle trip that Newman Ridge suffered through. And I think he could be a lot closer with a different kind of trip. Now, if he gets that trip next time with a normal racetrack, that's what you want. So I'm not blaming the rider here. This was just one of those days where being inside was a big disadvantage.
Jason Blewett keeps track of track trends on NYRA.com. Be sure to check that out. If you're serious about playing these races, this is where all these things are tracked day in and day out. The 26th was a big outside flow day, and we're going to take a look at another race from the 26th. The 6th race, Claimers, going 2 turns on the main track. We're going to specifically look at Marriage Fever. Gabriel Saez are going to break from the 2-hole. We'll see them break toward the inside, and the pink is fairly easy to identify. Another situation where, once again, you want it to be outside, not inside, and Marriage Fever is going to get stuck inside a little bit. Yeah,
he's kind of buried inside. And again, you wanted to get to the fence the first turn, but then you want to be able to work your way out somewhere, and he's always got Private Tail to his outside, and then Private Tail basically adds to his trouble down the backstretch when he gets a little bit keen under a 10-pound apprentice, and he just wipes Marriage Fever out, just takes his ground, and you just can't do that.
We're going to see heading to the backstretch, Marriage Fever on the inside, Private Tail's right alongside. Private Tail's fighting the rider a little bit here, maybe a little bit keen to go on. Here they are right here, Private Tail outside of Marriage Fever. But watch what happens, and the pan shot doesn't give it justice as to what really happens to Marriage Fever at this point, who is already up against it being on the inside of an outside flow track. And here it is right here.
Yeah, he just gets jammed back there. And Marriage Fever did some job trying to extricate himself from that trouble. Now, I understand Private Tail did get keen under 10-pound apprentice Wilson K. But it's your responsibility. You have to take care of that guy inside of you. That's why you have reins. They're your brakes and your steering. And he basically said, well, my horse is running off. I'm just going to let him go forward without any regard for the guy inside of him.
Pretty dangerous spot for Gabriel Saez. I mean, you were obviously a rider for many years. It's got to be intimidating when you're down inside and you see a horse coming over on top of you. What's going through your mind?
Well, especially when it's an inexperienced rider, because you realize they don't know how far they can keep coming before they really get you. And, if it's an older rider and you holler at him, he's probably going to give you at least a few strides to get out of there. And I thought what was impressive, Travis, was Marriage Fever caught his stride pretty quickly, made that kind of bold run, and he's going to flatten out late. But I think without that trouble, he's going to be a lot closer.
And you can see Private Tail's actually going to finish up okay, too. He's going to catch Marriage Fever late in the game. We're going to watch the head-on after this, and I wanted to ask you a question. You had mentioned how Marriage Fever sort of checked himself out of it or improved his own position, and here's the head-on here. So that's Marriage Fever. There's Private Tail. You made a comment that Marriage Fever was very athletic in his ability to get himself out of this trouble. You're going to see Private Tail come over. It looks pretty bad on the head-on. Talk about that.
Well, you can see now it's tightening up, and now here he comes without any regard. And did you see the way the horse kind of jumped and contorted himself to miss that other horse's heels? That was a remarkably athletic move by the horse Marriage Fever. And you could see Gabriel Saez is trying to react and get back out of the spot, but he can't get back quick enough. Marriage Fever basically saved both of them.
Interesting perspectives. So, as a horse player and as a race caller, I don't get the appreciation for how horses can be athletic and respond to situations like that one did.
Well, a 1,000-pound animal to be able to kind of turn themselves inside out to get out of a spot. He almost looked like a very athletic running back, hitting the hole and then being able to adjust as someone's trying to tackle them.
Scary backstretch run for Marriage Fever in that spot. Moving ahead to the 4th race on December the 27th. This is where the bias was no longer there. This Sunday, the 2 days after Christmas, the track was back to being fair again. No pronounced biases either way. We're going to watch J.R. Star, who breaks from post 3. Fairly well bet in this race. Was 9-2 in the wagering. Considered one of the horses to beat in this maiden special weight. I thought he did a fairly good job of getting position early on, but as the race progresses, things get more and more difficult.
Yeah, I thought John Bozono did a great job down the backstretch. He was able to get position, going forward, saving ground, which you want to do, especially when the track's fair. I think this is a great example of an unlucky trip as opposed to a bad ride. Now, obviously, if you had J.R. Star, you're frustrated because this horse really never got to run her race. But you want a rider to save ground. And I always say, you live by the sword, you die by the sword. You're going to win more races saving ground And you can see here, he's trying to give himself options. He's trying not to marry the fence, or there's a wave of horses moving his outside. Now he just needs something to open up. And you're going to see a little bit of a hole opens up here, not much. It's going to shut down very quickly. This was, to me, a prime example of a rider doing everything right, but everything goes wrong.
Tell me about when you turn for home in those situations. You have a wall of horses in front of you. Almost always something develops, right? But once in a while it doesn't, and this is where it didn't. Are sometimes horses just unwilling to push through those narrow openings, or do you need a special kind of horse who's willing to go through those holes and get the job?
It's a great question, because a lot of times if a horse is brave and has run, they're going to help you to get into and out of a spot quickly. If a horse is a bit hesitant, then by the time you get there, the hole that was appearing disappears. It happens very quickly. You know, I think he was doing everything right, and what you're doing as a rider when you're behind that wall of horses, you're studying the horses and riders in front of you. You're watching the way a horse carries his tail in front of you, giving you any indication that he's going to stop or drift one way or the other. And then also doing your homework, knowing the riders you ride with and who's going to tend to guard the inside, not want somebody to get through on him, and the horses that drift left or right. This was an example of just one of those occasions where nothing opened up.
I would let price dictate the play on J.R. Star. He could get a little bit overbet based off this trip. I think you could debate whether or not, even if the hole developed, if he had the run to necessarily win, he would have certainly been more competitive than he was. But you always have to worry going forward. What's the price going to be next time?
Well, it's interesting. I'd like to see J.R. Star stretch out, because I think she was a bit one pace, and that didn't help John Bissono get to a spot. I think 2 turns, she's probably either in front or laying second and can just keep on one pace.
Interesting. All right, let's move on to the 4th race on January the 1st. We're going to take a look at a first-time starter. And now this is a really interesting race. There's just a lot going on here. The horse is named Only the Truth, and he's the green with the white cap right there. And tough post, outside post for a first-time starter. A lot goes on in this first furlong.
Yeah, and you could see Cornelio Velasquez is desperately looking for a place to drop over and save some ground, and he is just hung out to dry. And that's why I always say I like inside posts going 2 turns on the inner track, because look where he winds up and how much ground loss. And this is a first-time starter, a horse that's inexperienced. It's going to get a bit lost out there anyway. Travis, you think about horses breezing in the morning. They go down to the rail when they speed up. Now a horse is out there in the middle, and that's one of the things that impressed me so much about Only the Truth. Once Cornelio has to back out and lost all that ground in the first turn, he does a great job to get to the fence. This horse stays in the bridle an awful long way, and to me, that's a sign of ability.
So going into the first turn here, I want to ask you, so Cornelio, he must have looked left 5 or 6 times, and horse players love to get onto jockeys for getting stuck with wide trips and not being where they want them to be. He tried to make a move to get over. Sometimes the race just did not develop that way.
No, you just got too many horses inside you. You know where you want to be. It's just that spot is occupied already, and you could see he was looking left, hoping for some sort of break, and it just never came. He would have almost been better if Only the Truth had broken slowly. And then he might have been outrun enough where he could have found a break to drop in. But you can see here now. Now he drops to the fence. And I always say this too, Travis. If you're going to be wide in the first turn, you got to save all the ground in the second turn. And conversely, if you know you're on a closer that needs to be outside, save every inch the first turn, because you're going to blow that ground later on. This horse is brave. He goes inside here, takes kick back in his face, the dirt thrown back in his face. And you can still see he's in the bridle, meaning he's still got a hold of him, and he's taking Cornelio into the spot.
You say into the bridle, so that means the horse is actually sort of pushing the reins a little bit. He's wanting to run a little bit. He's doing what the rider wants. He's keen to go on.
Right. He's grabbing the bit, and he's taking him there. And Cornelio now, he did the right thing. After that debacle on the first turn, through no fault of his own, saved every inch of ground. Now he's looking for a spot, and he's going to be able to adroitly angle out here. And now some of his greenness kicks in, where he never changes leads. And it looked like for a split second he might go on and just go ahead and get the money. The winner, Lucky Buck Syndrome, gets a perfect trip under Aaron Greider, and just a really tough beat if you needed Only the Truth for second, because he loses it on the bob. A terrific run from him, and a horse that I think can stand a raise and be effective.
Trainer Linda Rice, known for having second-time starters move up off their career debut, but for a first race to get stuck 5 wide into the first turn, to stay in the bridle, to then move over to the rail, be okay with being on the rail, and still try and finish up the race, shows some talent.
Some talent, and the fact that he started his career at a mile, 2 turns, it's asking a lot of a young horse, and this horse, I think, answered every question I think pretty positively, and I think can really go forward. He basically got about 3 races experience in one.
Not to mention, we had 5 races to talk about today. There's a lot more races coming up. Trips and Traps will be back next week. Comments, as always, tripsandtraps@nyring.com. Richie, I enjoyed it. Travis Stone, we'll see you next time.